Hey everybody, happy Sunday. Welcome back. I am Gina from Advantage College Planning, and this evening we are going to be talking about summer plans and how your teens' activities over the summer can really work for them and strengthen their college applications. So, I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk about summer planning. We are in April, so summer will be here before we know it. So I'm just going to give everybody a chance to come in and get settled and get cozy so that we can talk about summer planning this evening. Really great topic. The activities that students choose to do in the summer really can give them a lot of opportunity to grow and learn more about themselves, learn more about different possible fields they might be interested in, all those kinds of things. So we are going to talk about all of that tonight. Really excited to talk about that topic. So again, if you are new here, my name is Gina. I am with Advantage College Planning, and I like to hop on here, Facebook Live, every couple weeks with a different topic. And today's topic is going to be how can my summer plans strengthen my college applications? So as you are getting settled, please make sure to let me know where you're tuning in from. Let me know what year your students are, because then this way I can answer any questions that you have specifically. And you also have an opportunity to put your comments in the chat. So if you have any comments or questions that come up, feel free to put those in there. I am happy to answer those either throughout or at the end of the discussion today. All right, so let's jump right into it and let's talk a little bit about intentional summer planning. So, just like everything else with the college application process, when we talk about it, I talk a lot about being really intentional in the process and really being thoughtful about how students are navigating through, what colleges they're considering, what majors they're considering, all of that. And summer planning is really no different. It needs to be an intentional process. We start working with students at Advantage College Planning as early as eighth grade. And that summer before ninth grade is really when the tracking of summer activities for college applications gets started. So the summer before ninth grade. So if you have younger students and you're just joining me, welcome. So great to have you here. We're talking about summer and planning this evening. And so if you have younger students, they're maybe current middle schoolers, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. Let me know how old your students are. But if you have younger students that are getting ready to go into ninth grade, that's actually a great time to start being really thoughtful and intentional about what they're doing in the summer. Because when the student gets to the point that they're applying to college in a few years, the activities that they are engaged in, the ones that the colleges are most interested to hear about, those are the activities that start the summer before ninth grade. So as early as summer before ninth grade. And then, oh, we have a ninth grader. Perfect. Yep. So great timing, Joy. Perfect. Um, then all the way through every single summer through the summer before 12th grade. A lot of times students will say, well, it's the summer before senior year. Really, if I haven't done anything yet, I'm not going to do it. That's not true. There is a whole summer that is potentially going to add different activities that students can add to their college applications and opportunity for them to grow. So we want to be intentional every single summer. The summer is the time that I want to focus on right now because during the school year, students have a lot going on. They've got their academics, they're taking rigorous course loads. They may very well be involved in arts or band or sports that take up a lot of their weekends and a lot of their time. I know students are traveling for a lot of different competitions and things like that. So sometimes it's really hard for students to do a totally different activity not related to academics or their current, sport or art during the school year. In the summer, you've got a good about 8-week block of time that you can really do something meaningful with. And it's a great opportunity for personal growth. So let's talk about the different types of activities that students can engage in over the summer. The first one that we hear about a lot is volunteering. Volunteering is a great idea. So if your student has, something, a group that they're interested in supporting, whether that is working with elderly, homeless, women, children, the environment, food pantries, your church, right? Any type of place where they're looking for many hands to make light work. That is where your teen can be a great asset to that community and to that group. So volunteering is really great. Another opportunity that I encourage students to look into, depending on their age, is getting a part-time job. Part-time jobs are seen very positively in the college application review process, because to get a part-time job, you have to show a lot of initiative. If you were here last week, I talked a lot about resumes and showing initiative and being authentic. It takes a lot of initiative to go out and get a part-time job. A student has to apply, they have to maybe talk to a manager, do an interview. And then if a student has a part-time job, they're also showing a lot of responsibility and maturity. They have to be responsible to adults other than their parents, which might be the first time that a student has had that experience. They have to work out, conflicts that can come up at work. So part-time job, that's a great activity. Taking classes. So a lot of my older students, my rising seniors specifically, ask me about taking classes, dual enrollment at their local community college, and if this is a good idea. I think it really depends on the student. So if the student has a class that they really want to take, or a class that they're trying to make room for, if maybe, I have a lot of students who are in band, and in Wake County, where a lot of my students are located, if they're in band, that takes up multiple periods throughout their school year. And that really eliminates the number of classes that they can take as electives. So taking a class in the summer can be a great opportunity. I also have students who are interested in taking classes online through Coursera. So not for credit, but just for fun, just based on an interest. One class that I've been encouraging some of my students to look into is called The Science of Well-Being for Teens. So it's a course that is run by a professor, Dr. Lori Santos, and she's phenomenal. I did the adult version of the course, which is basically the science of well-being, the science of happiness, essentially. So she's revamped the program, and now it's specifically aimed towards adolescents and teenagers. It's online, it's free through Coursera. That could be a really great activity to do. So camps can also be really good, both traditional summer camps where a student might be a counselor, a counselor in training, or a camper, depending on their age, or also academic-based camps. A lot of our colleges in the area, or there's other companies that will come in and do a week-long camp on a college campus. Those can be really great if a student wants to see what it's like to spend time on a college campus, or if a student wants to learn a little bit more about the topic that's being covered by that camp. Lastly, for my slightly older students, college tours and test prep. That counts as a summer activity. That takes up a lot of your time and effort. So doing college tours in the summer as your student's getting ready to head into junior and senior year, that's a great time to make use of maybe some family time together and a little bit of time off of school or work to go check out some college campuses. And then again, rising juniors and maybe some rising seniors, if they're going to be testing a little bit later at the end of the summer, find that the summer is a great time to do their test prep for SAT and or ACT, because again, they're not also trying to juggle their school and their other activities, their sports, their arts, etc. So that's a big picture of different types of activities. The last type of activity that I'll mention is called a homegrown activity. I love a good homegrown activity. So that's the type of activity where a student does it on their own. They come up with something. Talk about initiative. This is full initiative, right? A student comes up with an activity that he or she wants to do. Maybe they want to learn a specific coding language. Maybe they want to teach themselves Spanish, right? Maybe they want to learn how to build something or make something, or they want to do a research project, or they want to grow in some specific way, and then they set out to do the research they need to do and then complete that project. That would be a homegrown project. That is also a wonderful activity and very meaningful. So the way that I see the summer kind of shaking out for different students is I break it up into 3 categories: summer activities to explore, summer activities to expand, and summer activities to enhance. So those are the 3 different types of activities. So let's talk about summer activities to explore. This is where your student is going to start if he or she doesn't really know what the heck they want to do, right? I'm sure that some of you have students who they don't know what they want to study. They don't know what they're interested in. They haven't found their passion, right? They're just kind of not sure. And I see that a lot with my students. And a lot of times that not being sure and not having that North Star to guide them, like I am a student who's into STEM. Okay, that makes it really easy. I have it figured out. I'm going to go to these kinds of camps. I have a lot of students who don't know what that is. So don't let that paralyze your student. The way that students figure out what their interests are or what their passion might be is to be exposed to it in the first place. So summer activity to explore. Get them out there, sign them up to do something. At this point, anything is going to be a new opportunity that can expose them to things that they like or things that they don't like. Both are opportunities for growth, right? So a lot of times for students, this usually means getting out of the house. Not always, but usually it means getting out of the house, because that's going to give you exposure to different kinds of people as well as different kinds of activities. So for example, there might be in the town that I live in, I just saw in our monthly magazine that is sent out that our local cultural center is hiring and looking for volunteers, both for people to help out with summer camps for kids this summer. They're usually about a week long, and they have all different themes, from cooking to sports to crafts, arts, etc. So depending on your student, that could be a great thing, right? Your student doesn't have to know for sure that they want to go into working with children in a drama theater capacity. But if this is a great way to find out if they like working with kids, right? This is a great way to see, okay, do I like being in this type of environment or not? And then that can potentially lead somewhere. So volunteer for 1 week at a craft themed camp for kids, or volunteer for, a few days at doing a park cleanup, because then they're going to meet other people. They're going to do an activity. They're going to see what they like. They're going to see what they don't like. It's just going to give you something to go off of to then plan your next activity. The second category are summer activities to expand. So these are going to be for students who maybe already have kind of an idea. They've started to identify, all right, these are the types of classes that I like the most. This might be what I want to learn more about. I might want to major in this. I'm kind of curious, but I don't know that much about it. So we're going to expand. So one example would be, this is where, a student could take a class online, right? So I have a lot of students who are interested in computer science, AI, those types of paths. So a lot of them will choose to do either a camp, or they will choose to do an online class. They can do a free online class to teach themselves Java, or they might do a week-long summer camp at one of our local universities that's specifically geared and focused on coding and computer science, and overview of different career paths that you could pursue with that degree, right? So the students already kind of identified what they are interested in, and now we're going to give them something to go a little deeper. Okay, how much more interested are you? Are you kind of burning out on it, or now are you curious as you're continuing to grow and learn more about this field? The third type of activity would be a summer activity to enhance. Okay, so now we've explored and we grew, and now we're enhancing. We're putting the flowers on the trees, right? We planted the seed, the tree grew, and now we're putting some flowers on. We're enhancing. This is for a student who has really identified, yes, like, I know I love working with kids who are on the autism spectrum. I know that I love coding. I know that I'm really into construction management. This is my passion. I'm super interested in it. I've taken classes at school. I've done an activity the last 2 summers. Yes. Great. So now we're going to look for a summer activity to enhance, to go a little bit deeper into that activity and start to give the student a little bit more of a sense of, all right, what might it be like to major in this in college? What might it be like to go into this specific path for a career? For a lot of students, this is where job shadowing comes in. So I do have a lot of students who work on and look for different opportunities for job shadowing. I have found that the most success typically comes from your network. So if you think about your inner circle and your family, your neighbors, your own professionals that you work with, who you've hired, or maybe who you go to for the doctor, things like that, those tend to be the great people to ask first if there are any opportunities this ask should come from your student, not from the adult, right? The adult can coach them a little bit, but it really should come from the student. But this is a great opportunity for your student to ask, are there any opportunities for a high school student to shadow you? I am really interested in becoming a pediatric oncologist, and I would love to learn more about what you do day to day, and learn more about what it's like to work in that environment. You may or may not be able to shadow a pediatric oncologist. That may not work out, but you may be able to shadow your dentist, who also works on little kids. Maybe you have a pediatric dentist, right? Not exactly the same field, but you're still getting to see what it's like to work in a medical type of capacity with little children. So that's one example. So doing that kind of activity would be a more enhancing activity. Another opportunity would be, again, getting a part-time job or volunteering. I have one student who's heading off to college this year, but she was really passionate and interested. Over time, she realized she really had a great talent for and an enjoyment for working with individuals who are on the autism spectrum or who have Down syndrome. And through a lot of different activities with her school, she also got involved with Gigi's Playhouse. And she was very active there, volunteered there a lot, and did a lot of different activities with the children who were at Gigi's, as well as some different things on her own, kind of hanging out with teens on this a specific one or two teens who she had come to know, and they had come to know her, who are on the spectrum. And so when the parents would go out for a date, she would hang out with that teenager, and they would go and do something, go see a movie or go do something, so that they were the teen was getting to have a nice time, and the parents were getting a little bit of a break and a night out, right? That's a great example of enhance. So something to think about here, and what you might be seeing is some of these activities might cost a little bit of money. A lot of them don't. So in order for an activity to be a good and valid activity, it does not need to cost money, right? Or I should rephrase that. An activity does not need to cost money in order to be a good and official activity. A lot of really great, significant activities that show a lot of initiative and authenticity don't cost the family or the student anything. And a lot of times students are making money, which is great. Another area for students to focus on, in addition to building that resume, which we'll come back to, is developing their independence. So again, we're trying to think about, the topic for tonight is, how does your students' summer activity plan positively impact their college application process? Part of it is we are trying to build a really strong resume, because that resume translates into their activity list, which is a way for the colleges to learn a little bit about their character and their personality. What do they do in their free time? How do they engage in activities that they're saying are important to them? But another piece that colleges are looking at is, are these students mature and independent enough to be able to come onto our campus and live here away from their families? And do they have the resilience, and do they have the independence and the maturity and the skills to navigate day-to-day life on top of college and academics, right? So developing independence is something that I encourage all of my students at every age. Remember, we start with 8th graders sometimes, all the way up to seniors, every summer, to build in some independence development. Again, that's going to look different for every student, right? But a lot of times the topics come back to about the same. So here's some suggestions. Some of you have your students are right now learning how to drive, right? They're just getting comfortable. They're trying to get their driving hours in. Some of them are really reluctant, and they're scared, and they're freaked out, because driving can be really scary. But encourage them to push through that by driving around your neighborhood and kind of in areas that feel safe before you hop on 40 during rush hour, right? Or trying to go to the Trader Joe's parking lot. I've told students Trader Joe's and Costco parking lot should be the driving test, as far as I'm concerned. That's like the most stressful driving that I do anytime. Have your students schedule their own doctor's appointments. Doctors, dentists, therapist, orthodontist, eye doctor, right? They have all these appointments that they have to have scheduled. Start to have your student be the one who's scheduling that. Maybe the first few times you sit with them. Maybe you need to have a family calendar that everybody's on, and teach your student how to look at the family calendar and see, okay, is this going to be a good date for this appointment? Will I be able to get a ride there? Help them start to learn how to work all those independence pieces through now, so that they have that skill once they're on their own and they get sick and they need to call, or they need to go to the dentist, right? They need to know how to make the appointment. One thing I used to do with students is I used to bring them to CVS, and I would go to the pharmacy aisle, and I would say, all right, go find me the medication that you need to buy if you have a headache. Go find me the medication that you need if you have a fever, if you have a cough, if you have a cut. Like, how do you navigate the pharmacy? It sounds really silly, but if we always do these things for the kids, they don't know how to do it. Right? And then you're going to have a 19-year-old on their own for the first time in college who has a fever, and they don't know what medicine to take or how much to take. So that's something to think about. Just simple things like that. Doing their own laundry, learning how to cook 3 specific meals that involve a stove, right? Not just peanut butter and jelly. So that developing that independence, it's going to make them feel more proud of themselves to develop that independence. And it's going to take a little bit off of your plate as the parent, which as a parent myself is always nice. The last thing I tell all of my students to do, and I actually start having them brainstorm now a list of books so that they can have time to get them, is to read a book in the summer. So number one, we know that the more they're reading books, obviously, the better their language skills are going to develop. That's going to serve them in every aspect of the application and college and life process. But short term, colleges, more and more colleges we're starting to see are including essays where they're asking students a question related to a book that the student has read. Typically, the prompt is pretty general. You can use pretty much any book to answer the prompt. But if you haven't read a book since you were in 6th grade, other than what's been assigned by your English teacher, it's a pretty hard question to answer, right? So the book can be about anything. Sometimes parents feel like, well, they have to read a book that's, very official or super academic or impressive in some sort of way. That is not true. So my main focus for them is pick a book that you're excited to read. It could be, if you're a nonfiction, history lover, go with that. If you are a romance, go with that. If you're a dystopian, futuristic kind of person, that sounds fine. So whatever your students into reading, just let them read for the love of it and not because it has to be about a specific topic. Also, we know that the more that students read, sometimes that can really impact and shift and help grow their worldview and help grow their perspective and expose them to other things. That's also the type of thing that colleges are looking for. Colleges are looking for students who can think critically and have had some exposure to the world, to different topics. They've started to maybe read something or learn something that's different than what they were faced with or what they thought before. And they've started to learn how to figure out what to do with that information if it's something that maybe goes against what they had always thought, right? So that's another benefit to reading. So here's why these summer activities matter. And here's why hopefully what you tuned in for tonight. Why do these matter? So number one, the summer activities above everything else matter for your students' personal growth. So any activity that they're engaging in, we really want them to be able to reflect back and say, what did you get out of this? Other than just checking a box and saying, I went to such and such camp for 1 week, check, done. If that's the only thing that your student is getting out of the experience, then they left a lot on the table. So we really want to be intentional and help students choose activities and engage in activities that are going to help them grow as a person, stretch them out of their comfort zone, have them do something new, learn a new skill, or put themselves in a new situation that they have to adapt to, because that's how we grow as people. And they're about to head off to college and be on a campus far away from their parents with a whole bunch of strangers. So the more comfortable we can get them in relying on themselves and knowing that they have the skills that it takes to be successful on their own, the better off they're going to be when that happens. The second reason is the summer activities can, again, help your student make intentional choices about what their future college major will be. So if you think back to the different categories of explore, expand, enhance, right? If a student comes to me senior year and says, I have no idea what I want to major in, that's fine. That is not a problem. And that is not a reason to panic. But it means that we're just going to have a little bit less time to explore, and they're going to have to do more of that exploring once they get into college, which again is fine and not a reason to panic. But if your student can start doing some of that exploring beforehand, let's say in 10th grade and 11th grade, they're going to feel at least a little bit more guided when it comes to that college application timeframe. They may not have figured out exactly what they want to do and narrowed down a specific major, but they're going to have at least a ballpark of the types of areas they feel most comfortable in or they're most interested in pursuing. They'll probably know if they like to work with little kids or not by the time they head off to college, right? Or they'll know if they really liked working in an office setting or they really liked working outside and they didn't really mind the heat and the humidity. Right? So helping them kind of at least start to figure out the types of settings, the types of experiences they might want to have. And then the third part are those college applications. So when your student applies to college starting the summer before their senior year, they're going to create their common application. And on the common application, there is a section that is called the activity list. And this list gives students an opportunity to include currently a maximum of 10 activities that they have been meaningfully involved in. Students don't need to have all 10, but we want to have more than 2, right? We want to have a balance. And so this is where the student is going to share with the college, here's what I've been doing outside of my academics to help me grow as a person, help me explore over the last 3 to 4 years. Colleges can then review that and start to get a little bit of a sense of who the student is, what's important to them, what are they choosing to do in their free time. They also look to see, okay, the student is saying they want to major in psychology and work with children, right? And I can see that this person has done a lot of volunteering and a lot of work at Gigi's Playhouse and babysitting and those kinds of things. Okay, that lines up, right? So it starts to tell a story of who your student is. And so anytime we can help make your student stand out in what makes them unique, we want to do that in the application process. And the activity list is really a way to do that. So those are the 3 reasons why the summer activities matter so much. The bottom line. So the bottom line is that it's not about the prestige. I really want you to walk away remembering that. It is not about the prestige of the program. It is about what your student is doing with their time and what they're getting out of that activity. Summer plans don't need to be elaborate and they don't need to be expensive. And honestly, a lot of the best activities that I've seen students do, the most meaningful for them, have been ones that were not either of those things, right? They were something that was homegrown or something that was, maybe cost a little bit, but it wasn't an exorbitant amount for the family to be able to pay for the student to go do this activity. So it's really all about planning ahead, think about what might be a great activity, pick 1 or 2 things for your student to do this summer. It does not need to take up the whole summer, but 1 or 2 things that would be meaningful for your student to do this summer so that you don't wake up in August getting ready to do your back to school shopping and realize, the whole summer went by and we didn't do anything to help them build their resume. So that is where we're going to leave that tonight. So if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat and I will answer those. And then as you are putting that in the chat, I will also let you know that I will be back here on April 30th. So I like to hop on Facebook Live every couple of weeks with different topics, and I'll be joined on April 30th by my colleague Jordan. We're going to talk about early decision in the application process and the other application plans. This will be really relevant to students who are current juniors, rising seniors, and getting ready to start thinking about how will I apply to these different schools? What plan is going to be the best for me? If you found this helpful tonight, you can also find a lot of other information from us on our website, advcp.com. We have a blog, a podcast, short videos by me, lots of great resources. And so you can definitely head over there and find a lot of other information as well. But if you don't have any other questions, then I will see you on April 30th. I hope you all have a great night. Thank you. Bye.